So that's one type of question that you get. Another type of question that is fairly frequently tested in your paper is section B में वो special audits and all of that is there ना, where where they specifically talk about prospective financial information and all of these points. So that is also, tested fairly frequently. Prospective financial information is, one favorite topic for section B. Apart from that, I think I gave you a small handout, so to say, on अपना this thing, sustainability, right? तो I would say एक बार just, वो पढ़ के जाना. It will give you a detailed understanding of what is going to come and what might be tested in the exam. So be matlab, be on track with that expectation. Okay, apart from that, one question in section B always is completion reporting, completion review and reporting. एक question हमेशा उस पे रहेगा. The other question could be something else. Now, completion review reporting में भी, if we open the exam kit, we'll see that उसमें भी एक pattern है कि these kind of questions are most frequently tested. Another type of question that is common in section B is, for example, something like quality management. ठीक है, तो एक quality management also becomes like a एक template है on how to answer those questions. So let me first of all take you to the exam kit. Let me show you what kind of questions are frequently tested. ठीक है, just give me one moment. Triple A, हाँ, practice kit. Have a look at this. These are your section A questions. Section B में let's go to page 71 where we have completion review reporting 17 से लेके 37 तक. We'll not look at all the questions, but let's try to understand कि इसमें क्या क्या आ सकता है and what kind of thought process do you need to develop. क्वेश्चन 17 था ना फर्स्ट, हाँ, कंप्लीशन रिव्यू रिपोर्टिंग. अब let's only have a look at the requirements to understand what are they asking. Evaluate matters which should be discussed with the management in relation to each of the unresolved issues and recommend further actions necessary before issuing the report. Then next one, यहाँ पे क्या पूछा है रिक्वायरमेंट में, डिस्कस एंड जस्टिफाई वेदर टू इंटरनल कंट्रोल मैटर्स शुड बी इंक्लूडेड इन कम्युनिकेशन विद TCWG. Using the file note prepared by the audit supervisor, recommend the matters to be included in your report to TCWG. Critically appraise the key audit matters from the auditor's report. So this question is very specifically built on the reporting part of it. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन देखो. Evaluate matters to be considered on completion of audit and the audit evidence you would expect to find during your review. ये पार्ट फिर से रिपीट हुआ है, matters to be considered, एंड ये एक नया चीज है, ऑडिट एविडेंस यू शुड एक्सपेक्ट टू फाइंड ड्यूरिंग योर रिव्यू ऑफ द रेलेवेंट ऑडिट वर्किंग पेपर्स. ठीक है, देन implications for the auditor's report of Marlowe's company, assuming that inventory matter has been satisfactorily resolved but no further adjustments. ये अगेन रिपोर्ट रिलेटेड क्वेश्चन है. ठीक है, सो आपका ISA 700, 701, 705, 720, 710, all of these are very very critical. यहाँ पे देखो, assumptions used by the management and completeness of cash flow forecast, explaining why a particular assumption should be challenged and approached with professional skepticism. Every question is different, but there is an underlying sense of commonality there कि ये जो भी सारे questions है ये कहीं ना कहीं देखो, discuss the appropriateness of the audit assistant's proposal for the audit report. Again, there is a question on reporting. ये व्हीलर देखो, अगेन कमेंट ऑन मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड, फिर से आपको आपका बात हो रहा है अबाउट मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड एंड एक्सप्लेन द ऑडिट एविडेंस यू शुड एक्सपेक्ट टू फाइंड ड्यूरिंग योर रिव्यू ऑफ द ऑडिट वर्किंग पेपर्स. सो एक ये जो टाइप ऑफ क्वेश्चन है, मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड एंड एविडेंस दैट यू एक्सपेक्ट टू फाइंड, ये बहुत बार रिपीट हो रहा है. एंड देन implications फॉर द ऑडिट रिपोर्ट, you can usually see that as being tested as the other question in the paper. Now एक और जस्ट हैव अ लुक एट व्हाट ऑल आर दे ट्राइंग टू आस्क। ठीक है, यहाँ पे कुछ सब्सिक्वेंट इवेंट्स के बारे में पूछा है। अगेन दे हैव आस्क्ड यू समथिंग इम्पैक्ट ऑन द ऑडिटर ओपिनियन। तो ऑडिटर ओपिनियन इज वन थिंग दैट यू शुड बी वेरी वेरी क्लियर अबाउट, बिकॉज इस पे एक क्वेश्चन पक्का आएगा और उस क्वेश्चन में implications ऑन द ऑडिट रिपोर्ट। देखो फिर से, मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड एंड एक्सप्लेन द एविडेंस यू वुड एक्सपेक्ट टू फाइंड, implications on the draft audit report prepared by the audit supervisor. So you go through more questions, you will again come across the same thing. Impact on the auditor report, देखो 8 मार्क के लिए फिर से impact on audit report आ रहा है। तो same thing is going to be tested over and over again, which means if the same thing is going to be tested over and over again, don't you think we should have a format that we have developed for these type of questions, कि whenever the question says that talk about matters to be considered or talk about the items that you would expect to find on the audit file, अगर क्वेश्चन इसके बारे में बात कर रहा है, then उसके लिए if there is a syntax, if there is a specific approach, then we should build that approach. And today that is what we are going to do, because ये पेपर में आने वाला compulsory question है, completion review and reporting. तो we'll do that, we'll understand matters to be considered and additional evidence you would expect to find in the audit file. ये दो चीजों पे हम हमारा आंसर बिल्ड करेंगे। मार्लोस कंपनी वाला क्वेश्चन, take this question as a, what would I say, like take this as some sort of a स्टैंडर्ड, कि भाई ये ऐसा अगर क्वेश्चन आया मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड का, तो कम से कम ये बेसिक चीजें तो हम करेंगे ही। एंड यू विल हेल्प मी टू अराइव एट द स्टेप्स, ऑल्दो मेरे पास स्टेप्स लिखे हुए हैं। आई विल नॉट शो दी स्टेप्स टू यू राइट अवे, आई विल, लेट्स वर्क टुवर्ड्स इट। उसमें एक 10 मिनट लगेगा अपने को, एंड लेट्स बिल्ड एन अप्रोच दैट कैन सर्व अस। ठीक है, चलो। कैन यू सी माई स्क्रीन?
Yeah, sure.
चलो, यूजिंग द इंफॉर्मेशन in Exhibits 1 and 2, evaluate the matters to be considered on the completion of the audit and the audit evidence you should expect to find during your review of the relevant audit working papers. The following mark allocation is provided as guidance for this question. Lease के लिए 9 marks है, inventory के लिए 7 mark है। They have asked you to use Exhibit 1 and 2. ठीक है, अब again, 1st of July, you are the manager responsible for the audit of Marlowe's company. Now understand that in this situation क्या हुआ? You are not talking about an audit. So if in the first question you were on 1st of July, the year was yet to end. The year was going to end on 30th September. Here, the year ended on 31st of March. Now the year is over. You are standing at a point which is after the end of the year. ठीक है, you have crossed that point and now you are at the completion stage of the audit. तो completion stage of the audit में what are the points that you should keep in mind? That is what this question is going to train us on. ठीक है, now what is today's date? Today's date is 1st of July 2005. You are the manager responsible for audit of Marlowe's company and you are completing the audit of the financial statements for the year ended 31st of March 2005. Marlowe's company is a listed company operating in the retail industry. Listed client है, and what is the sector that they are operating in? Retail है and listed है। The following exhibits available below provides information relevant to the question. Audit matters, summary of key matters and audit supervisor has flagged for your attention. Number 1, the draft financial statements recognize assets of 118 million and profit before tax of 11.5 million. Materiality has been set for the audit at 1.1 million. उन्होंने आपको materiality level set करके दिया है। To me it looks like अभी दिमाग लगाने का जरूरत नहीं है। Straight away get into new property lease. Marlowe's company expanded operations during the year and as a part of this process arranged on 1st of April 2004 a new property lease. The lease contract is for 7 years with a rent-free period of 12 months followed by 6 annual rental payments. The contract meets the IFRS 16 leases criteria to be classified as a lease. The financial statements recognize a right of use asset of 28.9 million and a corresponding liability of the same amount, which has been correctly calculated at the effective interest rate implicit in the lease arrangement. ठीक है, आपका right of use asset कितना है? 28.9 and a corresponding liability of the same amount. Management has not charged any depreciation on the right of use asset, stating that the rent-free period should not result in an expense being included in the statement of profit or loss. Management proposes to begin depreciating the right of use asset in the next financial period and will depreciate the asset over the 6 years for which they make the payment. The finance cost in relation to lease liability has been correctly accounted for in the financial statements. Now there is a 9 mark subpart here. That 9 mark subpart is on leases. The remaining 7 mark subpart is on inventory. तो एक टाइम पे let's focus on one thing. ठीक है, and let's side by side let's also develop our standard steps to be considered. ठीक है, now this is set at what stage? अभी तक आप रिपोर्टिंग स्टेज पे गए नहीं हो, आप अभी कौन से स्टेज पे हो? अभी you are at the completion stage and you are evaluating a couple of points at this stage. Now, two things have been asked to you. One, evidence you should expect to find during your review of the relevant working papers, and evidence that you would expect to find on the audit file. मतलब somebody has already conducted the evidence gathering process, किसी junior ने वो काम कर दिया है, आपका क्या काम है? आपको they have asked you कि before you open the file, what all do you think should be there on the audit file? मतलब what is that ideal set of documentation that you would find on the audit file? Now the question का फर्स्ट पार्ट देखते हैं पहले, मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड. अब मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड के लिए लेट्स मेक अ लिस्ट ऑफ सम स्टैंडर्ड चेक पॉइंट्स. ठीक है, व्हाट शुड बी रिटन अंडर मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, वॉट एवर इज द आइटम दैट यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट, आप पहले ये लिखो कि डज इट क्रॉस द मटीरियलिटी थ्रेशोल्ड. ठीक है, सो राइट अबाउट दैट फर्स्ट. Evaluate whether the item exceeds the materiality threshold. Check if information on materiality is given in the question, or whether they have given a way to calculate materiality. Materiality either दिया है कि नहीं, and evaluate whether the item exceeds the materiality threshold. ठीक है, if it does, state that कि भाई the item exceeds the materiality threshold, ऐसा लिखो आप वहां पे. ठीक है, then now in this case what do you have? You have a lease liability and you have a right of use asset. आपको next चीज क्या लिखनी है? आपको matters to be considered में ये लिखना है कि what are some of the points that you would keep in mind when you are evaluating a right of use asset and a lease liability. ठीक है, अब जैसे right of use asset, so state how exactly, state how is the right of use asset accounted for. मतलब write about कि at what value is it measured, at what value should it be measured, ये लिखो. उसके बाद what is the further treatment with respect to that? rather इसको थोड़ा जेनेरिक करते हैं. State the following with respect to the item in question. क्या क्या लिखना है आपको? First thing, when is it recognized? अगर information मतलब you should ideally point towards that. Then at what value should it be recorded ideally? ठीक है. Then subsequent accounting treatment and measurement. जैसे for example, if you are talking about financial instruments and your financial instruments is investment in debt instruments which are held for trading. So ideally what you should write is here the matter that we'll consider is whether this particular investment in debt instrument was shown at fair value through P&L. ठीक है. Now ये मतलब राइट अबाउट दैट. देन सब्सिक्वेंट अकाउंटिंग ट्रीटमेंट एंड मेजरमेंट में अगर नॉन करंट असेट होगा तो लिखो यार वी शुड बी ऑन द वी शुड कंसिडर वेदर दैट पर्टिकुलर असेट वाज इट डेप्रिशिएटेड इन द करेक्ट वे, समथिंग लाइक दिस. ठीक है. डी और अदर यहाँ पे गिव यू एन एग्जांपल. फॉर एग्जांपल, इफ यू आर टॉकिंग ऑफ पीपीई, ठीक है, एज एन ऑडिटर व्हाट विल यू keep in mind with respect to subsequent treatment of this item in the financial statements? That is it depreciated? Is the calculation right? Is the method okay? Something on these lines basically. ये आएगा आपका again matters to be considered में. ठीक है. And also mention that any issue that you create with respect to this would ultimately lead to. हाँ, एक और बात करो आप मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड में. दैट इज अबाउट क्लासिफिकेशन, देन प्रेजेंटेशन, देन डिस्क्लोजर. कि यार अगर फॉर एग्जांपल आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट प्रोविजन और अलाउंस फॉर रिसीवेबल्स, तो क्या होना चाहिए? अलाउंस फॉर रिसीवेबल्स इज नॉट शोन इन द बैलेंस शीट ऑन द लाइबिलिटी साइड, इट इज शोन इन द balance sheet as a subtraction, as a deduction from the debtors का value. Correct? So these are the points that you should be considering. This will come under matters to be considered. So whenever the question talks about matters to be considered, mention this. And scope for material misstatement in that item. कि उस item में is there a scope for material misstatement? Say for example, we are talking about inventory. Like in yesterday's question, the inventory is sold at a substantial discount in order to attract more customers. So there is a scope for material misstatement in that item. We'll talk about that in matters to be considered. Are you with me, all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Second type of question क्या है? Second question है इसमें an audit evidence you should expect to find. ठीक है, मतलब आइडियल सेट ऑफ एविडेंस क्या है, दैट इज व्हाट दे आर आस्किंग यू. ठीक है. सेकंड टाइप इज audit evidence that or rather audit evidence expected to be audit evidence expected. Sure. Audit evidence expected to be found on the audit file. So basically we are talking about ideal set of evidence that should be collected with respect to that item. ठीक है, इसमें देर इज वन मोर पॉइंट दैट यू शुड कीप इन माइंड. If there are certain case specific issues, then we should also incorporate their impact. ठीक है, ये हो गया बात मेरा आइडियल एविडेंस का. ठीक है, एक और चीज मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड में, whether any error was committed. This is deliberately or by mistake. दोनों में से एक आपको चेक करना है, whether any error has happened either deliberately or it has happened by oversight or by mistake. ठीक है. Then audit evidence that you would expect to find on the audit file. This is the ideal list of documents that should be there. For example, if you are evaluating investments, तो investments के केस में investment certificate should be there. Then if the company has made an irrevocable decision to designate the particular instrument as fair value through OCI, तो उसका डॉक्यूमेंट होना चाहिए. इफ यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट अ लोन अग्रीमेंट, देन कॉपी ऑफ द लोन अग्रीमेंट, लोन रीपेमेंट schedule, balance confirmation from bank, these are or interest calculation, TDS calculation, these are all evidence points. ठीक है. अब एक बार इसको देखो, मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड, एंड देन वील गो बैक टू द क्वेश्चन. सब लोग देख लो. देख लिया. चलो, नाउ थिंक अबाउट इट. न्यू प्रॉपर्टी लीज, व्हाट आर द मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड. अच्छा, आई गिव यू अ मिनट, आई जस्ट फेच माई वाटर. इट इन दैट टाइम just go through the new property lease and see if there is any accounting error that has happened. ठीक है, एक बार चेक करके बताओ. चलो, टेल मी, इज देयर एनी एरर इन द अकाउंटिंग पार्ट? है कोई एरर?
Sir, the value calculation is correct, but
हम्म.
the depreciation is not correct because as per ISA 16, we depreciate from the moment we get to use the asset. So,
So the depreciation should happen from the date the asset is ready for use, correct? Which they are not doing in this case. So there is an accounting error. Okay, so that will also have to be mentioned in your answer. Okay, let's have a look at how the solution is framed. The right of use asset exceeds the materiality threshold of 1.1 million and is therefore material to the financial statements. As per IFRS 16, the lease liability should be measured at present value of all unpaid lease rentals at the date of commencement of the lease, which is discounted at the interest rate implicit in the lease. This part appears to have been done correctly. So the first thing is evaluate whether the item exceeds the materiality threshold, which you did. Then if it does, state the following with respect to the items. When is it recognized? At what value should it be recognized? And in subsequent accounting treatment. ये हो गया आपका लीज लाइबिलिटी का कि व्हेन शुड द लीज लाइबिलिटी बी रिकॉग्नाइज्ड एंड एट व्हाट वैल्यू. नाउ टॉकिंग अबाउट राइट ऑफ यूज असेट. The right of use asset should initially be measured at the amount of lease liability, that is present value of future payments plus any amount paid at or before the inception of lease. Any direct cost incurred towards the lease should be capitalized. ठीक है, तो here you have to state that right of use asset of 28.9 million and corresponding liability of the same amount which has been correctly calculated at the effective interest rate in the lease. You should then mention that this part appears to have been done correctly. This part appears to have been done correctly. ठीक है. So you spoke about the right of use asset, you spoke about the lease liability. ठीक है. Now the debt. Now let's talk about subsequently क्या होगा उसके केस में. This particular point. Subsequent accounting treatment and measurement. Ideally, with respect to the lease liability आपको क्या करना है? With respect to the lease liability there will have to be a finance cost and the lease payment, and apart from that with respect to the right of use asset there will have to be a depreciation. तो लिखो, the right of use asset needs to be depreciated over the lease term or its useful life, whichever is lesser. The asset should be shown at cost less accumulated depreciation less impairment loss. Although the lease has a rent-free period of 12 months at the beginning, it does not affect the calculation of lease liability and right of use asset. The lease term is 7 years and it is necessary to depreciate the asset over a 7-year period, which will result in a depreciation of 4.1 million per annum. The amount is material and as such not recording depreciation in year 1 will lead to a material misstatement. So यहाँ पे इन्होंने क्या बोला है? We will start depreciating it from the next year. तो इन योर मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड आप क्या करेंगे? यू विल एक्सप्लेन द अकाउंटिंग ट्रीटमेंट एक्सपेक्टेड बाय द स्टैंडर्ड. देन यू विल, क्या लिखा था मैंने? और स्कोप फॉर मटेरियल मिसस्टेटमेंट इन दैट आइटम. यहाँ पे देर इज अ स्कोप फॉर मटेरियल मिसस्टेटमेंट, सो मेंशन दैट कि यार जब आप when you do not depreciate it over the correct duration तो आपका calculation would be incorrect. ठीक है. The amount is material and as such not recording depreciation in year 1 will lead to a material misstatement. ठीक है. So आपका matters to be considered में ये सारा चीजें आएगा. Another thing that you should definitely write about is subsequent treatment of lease liability. यहाँ पे फाइनेंस चार्जेस आएगा आपका एंड पेमेंट एंट्री. ठीक है. दिस इज द subsequent treatment. एक बार देख लो, हैव अ लुक एट इट. इसके जो दोनों सब पार्ट्स में मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड है ना, वो एक साथ देखते हैं, एंड देन वील गो फॉर द एविडेंस पार्ट। ठीक है। नाउ लेट्स क्विकली कम टू, ये हो गया मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड फॉर लीज। अब देखते हैं मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड फॉर इन्वेंट्री। Marlowe's company has recently negotiated arrangements with a new supplier. Included in the contract is a clause which allows the supplier to require return of the products at any time. Marlowe's company can also return the products within a set period of time if they remain unsold. Inventory purchased from the new supplier with a value of 8.1 million is included in the company's financial statements as inventory at 31st of March 2005. These amounts are recognized at cost, which is lower than the net realizable value of the product. Again, matters to be considered whether it exceeds the materiality threshold. First point. Does it?
Yeah.
If if they remain unsold, inventory purchased from new supplier with a value of 8.1 million is included in the company's financial statement. So yes, this amount is material. Then what will you check? State that it is material. Then when is it recognized, at what value should it be recorded, subsequent treatment, classification, presentation and disclosure. The inventory held by Marlowe's company purchased from the new supplier is held on consignment. ये कौन सा arrangement है? Marlowe's company has an arrangement with a new supplier. Included in the contract is a clause which allows the supplier to require return of the products at any time. So supplier has given the goods to Marlowe's. ठीक है, मार्लोस कंपनी को सप्लायर हैज गिवन समथिंग एंड ही हैज द राइट एज इन he can force the other party to return the products at any time. Marlowe's company can also return the products within a set period of time if they remain unsold. Inventory purchased from the new supplier is 8.1 million included in the company's financial statements. Now, in this case, if you remember IFRS 15 specifically talks about consignment. And in case of consignment sale, you will say that the sale is complete only when the control passes on to the customer. यहाँ पे Marlowe's company is the customer and there is a supplier. What does control mean? Control is basically the ability to tell what to do or what not to do with a particular item, ability to direct the use of a particular item. और यहाँ पे they have very clearly mentioned that Marlowe's company can return the products in that period of time and the supplier can ask for the goods back at any point in time. So basically Marlowe's company को कभी भी it never got control over that particular asset. ठीक है, so unless and until you have control over that particular asset, it should not be recorded as your inventory. But it has been recorded as your inventory. यहाँ पे लिखा है inventory purchased from new supplier with a value of 8.1 million is included in the company's financial statements as inventory at 31st of March. These amounts are recognized at cost, which is lower than the net realizable value. बट यहाँ पे द इशू इज कि यार आपने इन्वेंट्री करके उसको इंक्लूड कर दिया, बट ये आपका इन्वेंट्री है ही नहीं बिकॉज दिस इज अ कंसाइनमेंट अरेंजमेंट. यू आर ओनली होल्डिंग द गुड्स ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ समवन एल्स. इस पे द कंट्रोल हैज नॉट पास्ड ऑन टू यू एंड यू आर मार्लोस कंपनी. द कंट्रोल इज स्टिल विद द supplier only, because these 2 points specifically point towards that if you have the ability to tell the other party here goods वापस करो if they are not sold, then don't you think the control has still not been given on to the other entity? And if the control is not passed on to the other entity, that is Marlowe's company, जब तक आप Marlowe's company को control pass नहीं करोगे, Marlowe's company cannot record it as its own inventory. For that particular reason, this 8.1 million which has been included as inventory is incorrect. ठीक है, तो ये पार्ट आपको यहाँ पे लिखा है ना, स्कोप फॉर मटेरियल मिसस्टेटमेंट इन दैट आइटम, तो वो आपको लिखना पड़ेगा. ठीक है, एक बार गो थ्रू दिस मैटर्स टू बी कंसिडर्ड. फर्स्ट थिंग यू शुड डू इज you should write about materiality. Write about materiality first and everything else comes in later. ठीक है। Anything that you want to ask in this matters to be considered wala part? You basically spoke about what is the correct accounting treatment, and then you mentioned that if any error was committed here, you highlighted that error. ठीक है, आपने वो error बता दिया and your job is done. ठीक है।
Yes, sir. Done.
Okay. Now, the second part is evidence that you expect to find on the audit file. This is basically ideal evidence that you should come across in the audit file. तो अभी वो वाला part एक साथ देखते हैं. Yes, Himanshu.
So, hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah.
So, for this consignment question, can we state that they have the payment? Usually, consignment are not for consignment. Their payment is not due until the consignment is sold.
Hmm.
Can we state that in the answer?
You can. It doesn't harm the answer in any way. आप
Okay,
लिख
sir.
सकते हैं. हाँ.
But it is safe to assume that.
So that is mostly the case ना. एडवांस में तो बहुत रेयरली पैसा देता है कोई.
Got it, sir.
है ना.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Ayush.
So continuing to what Himanshu asked, with respect to the consignment, can we mention that Marlowe's company is only entitled to recognize the commission and not the whole revenue?
But is there any indication of that in the question?
No,
The
sir.
question is on inventory. So why do you want to write about something that is not even mentioned in the question? This is
Okay.
where we lose marks ना. जो पूछा नहीं है अपने को, we know something doesn't mean that we have to write about it ना. We should only write about that part which has been specifically asked, and this question has its focus on inventory, not on revenue recognition. वो तो unless you talk about revenue recognition, you can't talk about transfer of control. And unless you speak about transfer of control, you will not be able to mention the fact that it cannot be considered in your inventory and it is still the inventory of the supplier. तो उस पॉइंट पे पहुंचने के लिए दिस इज इंपॉर्टेंट, विच इज वाई वी स्पोक अबाउट इट. वो कमीशन वमीशन का कोई लेना देना है ही नहीं यहाँ पे.
Okay, sir. Also, sir, with respect to the materiality that we need to, mention at the start of the answer, it
हम्म.
is materiality which is specific to the question, which is like, 1.1 million materiality that has been considered for the company, or we need to define materiality a bit.
वो तो उन्होंने करके दिया है ना, तो फिर दोबारा क्यों करना है आपको?
No, no. So what should we ideally write about materiality?
तो मैंने यहाँ पे लिखा ना, यू रेड दिस.
Yes, sir. Oh, okay.
ओनली दैट मच.
Okay, sir.
ठीक है.
Thank you, sir.
यू आर वेलकम. And now the second part of the question in both cases is evidence that you would expect to find on the audit file. ठीक है. अब यहाँ पे you are talking about new property lease. What evidence do you think you would find on the audit file if you are evaluating a lease? ठीक है. Let's start with you guys only answering the question. Himanshu, tell me one evidence or one item that you would obtain as evidence in respect of the uh, lease.
So, we could get the documents regarding the lease agreement.
Okay. So copy of the
And
lease agreement.
yes, sir.
And what purpose would that serve? Tell me. आप लीज अग्रीमेंट से क्या चेक करने का कोशिश करेंगे?
So, we could check the payment terms and the payment terms and the amount which is required to be paid. And we can agree them with the amount which has been mentioned in the financial statement.
So basically, you will take a copy of the loan agreement, nahi, lease agreement. And what will you collect that for? You should mention that also. Copy of lease contract to agree the lease term, the payments required, the interest rate implicit in the lease. So यहाँ पे जो मैंने audit evidence है, so talk about ideal set of evidence and also mention what does each piece of evidence help you with? ठीक है, what does each piece of evidence help you with, वो भी आप mention करो. So if you obtain a copy of the lease agreement, what is it helping you with? It is helping you to verify the lease term, the lease payments and the interest rate implicit in the lease, starting date, ending date, ये सारा कुछ आपको वहां से मिलेगा. ठीक है. दर्शन, can you tell me one more thing?
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, go ahead.
We can try to find the bank statements to check the payment if the payment amount is similar to what is stated in the financial statements.
Okay. You will obtain a copy of the
Bank statements.
Okay, copy of the bank statement to see whether the amount has been fair enough. Then who will tell me the next one? Niharika, can you tell me one such item?
Um, you could take a copy of management's calculation to see if their calculation of right of use and lease liability is correct.
Okay, fair enough. So you want to see whether the present value calculation that they have done, whether it is right or not. Okay, ठीक है. Sahil? Sahil? Chalo, Felicia, you tell us.
We could ask the company's policy regarding the depreciation method used for the other ones.
Policy. Okay.
Like the, like basically what depreciation method are they going to use, or have they put the depreciation for the current year as well?
Okay. Okay. Then Khushi, can you tell us one point or one evidence that you could expect to find on the audit file? Falguni?
Yes, sir. We can obtain the notes of discussion with management to verify the use of asset.
That's so, again, this is not how you should frame the answer. Note of discussion with the management is a correct point, but we should obtain means you are now saying कि आगे लेना पड़ेगा. They are asking file में क्या क्या already होगा. So your answer should be basically a list of items that are there. So you should start with notes of discussion with the management regarding the use of asset and cash flows. वो लिखो. But your answer cannot be written as we should obtain this or go and obtain this, because the question is saying आपको audit file में क्या क्या evidence मिलना ideally मिलना चाहिए. So आपने जो item बोला, just mention that as a list. Don't say go and obtain this item. ठीक है.
Okay. Okay.
A copy of lease agreement using which you can verify the amount of lease rentals, period covered by the lease, date of payment, interest rate, blah blah blah. Evidence that physical verification was performed to confirm the existence of the building and its condition. We did not say physically verify the existence of the building. We said we need to have evidence that a physical verification was performed. ठीक है. Then copy of management's calculation of present value of lease obligation and right of use asset. So I think one of you mentioned this point. Then recalculation done by the audit team. Management का calculation and your team has also worked on it. ना तो उन्होंने जो recalculation किया उसका outcome आपको लगेगा. Then notes from discussion with the management regarding the use of asset, that point which Falguni mentioned. Then copy of non-current asset register, copy of draft financial statements for verification of disclosures. ठीक है. Then I think Felicia had mentioned this point where you will also expect copy of company policy to review accounting treatment, depreciation, etc. Depreciation policy, not depreciation. Depreciation policy and क्लासिफिकेशन, presentation, ये सारा कुछ. These are evidence points that you expect to find on the audit file. ठीक है, एक बार have a look. ठीक है. Now evidence expected on the audit file in respect of inventory. Chalo, think about it. Tell me what all evidence do you expect to find with respect to inventory?
Um, a
Yes.
copy of a contract with the new supplier to check the terms and this arrangement that they have.
Okay. Then
Document of physical verification of inventory that was present at the year end.
document of physical verification. Okay. Then so think about, if you would have been an auditor, what evidence would you have gathered and what would have that helped you in? That should form a part of your answer. So basically, notes from discussion with the management, which contains details of approach taken by the management to exclude this inventory from inclusion in the financial statements. Basically, when you have consigned inventory, usually what they do is they keep it separately in a separate part of the warehouse, or ऐसे separately mark out करके somewhere they will write down, or somewhere they will ensure that it does not mix with the main inventory that the company has. Apart from that, copy of contract with the supplier to understand the terms and conditions of the contract, copy of inventory records to check the total quantity of inventory received and remaining unsold, and evidence of goods received, goods returned, refunds due and paid, refunds due and not paid, supplier reconciliation statement, and quantity verification at the end of the period. Why would you need all of these? You would need all of these to ensure that the balance with this particular consignor is settled in the right way, and though you have not yet paid for the inventory that has not yet been sold, because you are only acting like an agent right now who is holding the inventory on behalf of someone. So जो inventory अभी तक ultimate customer को बिका नहीं है, that inventory should also, you should not make payment for that particular inventory. You have to be careful about that part. So these are the points that you would expect to find on the audit file. ठीक है? Any questions that you want to ask about this type of question?
Yes, sir. On the above part where we had given them suggestion कि ये होना चाहिए, ऐसे नहीं है treatment. So does that impact our evidence also कि हम ये particular तरीके का evidence ढूंढना try करेंगे to ensure that management has done the adjustments to financial statements?
See, ऊपर में you are technically not writing about evidence to be gathered. You are writing about matters to be considered. So matters to be considered are basically ideally, when you are conducting an audit, what should you keep in mind about these items? So that can, in a way, guide you about what is the most appropriate evidence to be obtained. So you could say that the first part of the question, which is matters to be considered, ki if I am auditing inventory, what point should I keep in mind? That is a list of basically a list of to-dos or list of precautions I need to take or things I should be super careful about. That is the first part. And then the second part is कि हाँ फिर to get that in a way to satisfy the matters under consideration, what points would you include in the मतलब ideally then what would you be considering for the evidence part?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. ठीक है. Now, last part, evaluate the implications for the auditor's report of Marlowe's company, assuming that the inventory has been assuming that the inventory matter has been satisfactorily resolved, but that no further adjustments or disclosures are made to the financial statements with respect to the new property lease. Now, matter with respect to the inventory has been satisfactorily resolved, but no further adjustments or disclosures are made to the financial statements with respect to the new property lease. यहाँ पे ideally you should have corrected the depreciation entry, right? So that adjustment should have happened. You have not done that adjustment yet. And because you have not done that adjustment yet, that point should be mentioned in the so you told the management कि यार ये mistake हुआ है, the depreciation should be calculated with respect to 7 years, but you calculated that with respect to 6 years. So naturally there has been a misstatement. Now कितने का misstatement है वो check करो. 28.9 upon 6, and this is the depreciation that you actually recorded. And what is the depreciation that you should have recorded? 28.9 upon 7. You have understated, sorry, you have overstated expenses by 0.69. Also, you are in contravention of the provisions of the accounting standard. जो accounting standard ने बोला है वो भी आपने follow नहीं किया है, and at the same time there is a misstatement with respect to the value also. So now they are asking you what is the implication of that with respect to the auditor report, because with respect to leases the management has not done any adjustment. ठीक है. Now, in respect of the depreciation charge for leased property, it appears that profit for the year is overstated by 4.1 million. Yes, Ashish, बोलो.
Yes, sir. यही कहना था कि we haven't made depreciation, like we haven't recorded depreciation for the year, like जहाँ free है, right? तो जो
Correct.
amount misstated होगा वो पूरा 4.
0.69 नहीं होगा, पूरा 4.13 होगा. Because in this question, they have specifically mentioned that the management did not record any depreciation in the first year. मतलब कुछ भी नहीं. ये 4.82 divide by 67 उन्होंने कुछ भी नहीं किया. They have not recorded any depreciation. That means पूरा का पूरा 4.1 is materially misstated. ठीक है. This is a material misstatement in the financials, but as this represents a single item only, the misstatement could be considered as material but not pervasive. It relates only to one item. It's not like a disease which has spread all over the financial statements. So you mentioned that part. Yeah, this is a misstatement with respect to only one item in the financial statements. And which is why it is, and because the value is 4.1, it is material, but it is not pervasive. And as such, the audit opinion should be modified and a qualified opinion should be given. Whenever you write कि यार आपको qualified opinion देना चाहिए या आपको adverse opinion देना चाहिए, whenever you talk about it, just also mention specifically that the basis for qualified opinion paragraph should also be written in the audit report. So ये एक point आप लिखेंगे तो you will all end up getting one more extra mark. What you will get some marks for stating that this is material but not pervasive. So आप qualified report दो and then also write down the basis for qualified opinion paragraph. वो लिख के खत्म करो. So this is basically the kind of questions that they will ask you in terms of the implications on the audit report. सो दैट बेसिकली सम्स अप, आपको जो भी क्वेश्चन आएगा वो इसी टाइप का आएगा कि व्हाट इज द इम्प्लीकेशन ऑन द ऑडिट रिपोर्ट. नाउ यू हैव टू इवैल्यूएट ए द इम्पैक्ट ऑफ द एरर और द इम्पैक्ट ऑफ द अनकरेक्टेड misstatement. If it is more than the materiality threshold, it becomes a material misstatement. If the impact is localized, you know that if it is just in one area, you will say that this is a misstatement which is material. मतलब ये problem तो है, but it is not pervasive. It does not spread throughout the financial statements. So you will give a qualified opinion. If it is material and pervasive both, ठीक है, that is the disease spreads all across the financial statements. In that case, what will you say? In that case, you will say that material and pervasive, therefore give an adverse opinion. And if you want to form an audit opinion, but you have been unable to form an opinion because of the fact that all the required necessary information was not provided to you. So now what you are doing is you are saying कि मैं opinion form ही नहीं कर सकता. That is known as a disclaimer of opinion. ठीक है. So ये तीन चीजें आपको समझना क्वेश्चन में will be very important. As in what kind of an opinion are you making, or what is the nature of the misstatement? Is it material? सिर्फ material but not pervasive, qualified opinion. Material and pervasive, then you have adverse opinion. And you are not able to form an opinion वाला situation होगा तो you get a disclaimer of opinion. And आपको हर आंसर में ये लिखना चाहिए कि this should be followed by a basis for qualified opinion para, or it should be followed by a basis for adverse opinion para, or whatever. Just mention that part and that should seal your answer. Now, today I have to rush somewhere for another meeting, so I'll have to stop today's session. We have done two question types. One, evidence expected to be found, and the matters to be considered. And I have given you a syntax and a format of both of these. Tomorrow I'll take up another form of question where some other parts in section B also we'll tackle tomorrow. कल का टाइमिंग मैं आपको थोड़ी देर में I'll confirm and tell you. ठीक है, I'll tell you on the group itself. Today I have to rush because there's some other meeting. I'll cover up between tomorrow and Friday. ठीक है,
Okay, sir. Thank you.
चलो, thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye, sir. Thank you.